All right, it's about that time when we get into the dailies. With me already in studio, we have public policy analyst Arnold Maliba in a yellow tie. I don't know whether it is stelling or not, but in a short while, I also expect Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate and political analyst, and Mark Bichachi, communication strategist. This is what we're interrogating this morning. Shareholding in government, will bipartisan talks see another divided presidency? And speaking of that, this is the headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. Question: falling apart? Kenya Kwanza leaders appear to be reading from different scripts. Ruto and Gachagua in a back and forth over, quote, shareholding. Cracks President Ruto. Let me just come in closer. It is primitive and backward for anybody to imagine that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted. That is not correct. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua quoted as stating, those who joined us late should not expect much at the expense of Kenya Kwanza loyalists. We will continue giving good jobs to those who stood with us from the beginning. And the Deputy President, Arnold, took the view yesterday that he and the President are actually reading from the same script. He said development is for everyone across the board, but when it comes to prime positions, that is the preserve of those who stood with President William Ruto in the polls. In your view, are they speaking from different scripts or they're aligned?
I think, first of all, even having this particular headline and the discussion we're having today is, for me, quite an unnecessary venture, because, first of all, we've really spinned this thing beyond what it's supposed to be. I do not think that what the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has been saying is exactly what we've actually gone around to spin and mean when he spoke about shareholding and everything else. He simply meant that horse trading is a very normal thing in politics. That, let me just ask, do you really think that Hassan Omar, Eliud Owalo, Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, and the others were supporting Kenya Kwanza like it's missionary work? This is service to the Lord? Not really. They were here because they knew that upon victory, they had legitimate expectations out of this particular government. So I do not think that the Deputy President, of course, there is a way we pick stuff and then and he went outside and said that this government is not falling apart. He said that. I don't know whether the paper today, I've not looked at the depth of the story. I don't know whether the paper actually goes ahead and actually lifts that story. He says there is nothing that he's
He did say the government is stable.
The government is stable. There is nothing like falling apart. But you see, I really want to start from this particular point. There's been this campaign about Tugege and Tugegestan. That is the core of why we are here. The people who actually are pushing that narrative are what I would call ethnic nationalists who do not know any other way of doing things other than being in control. And they now want to bully a community into some ethnic retreat so that they can actually rule them. You know, they are behaving like white nationalists. When Obama came to power, they didn't believe that a black man would come in. So when you see people actually trying to raise individuals like Maina Njenga, for example, quote unquote, to become their leader, just because this is a reaction that a community voted in a way they didn't like. As in, this is a nation, it's not an experiment. We can't play around here. People like, for example, I saw the women MP for Kiambu, Wamchomba, yesterday. You know, she suffers from hangover from a past regime where if you looked at the budget of the nation, the national budget, and you looked at how they appointed seats at that particular time, it was reflective of how the core support of government looked like. But we have to move on. The republic must grow. We are moving towards a perfect republican democracy where it doesn't matter whether you voted for a government or not. The rights that are in the Constitution, Article 43, whatever it is, you are entitled to them. So we cannot have a people who continuously have a way of defining politics and power that if they are not in the presidency, if they are not the PS interior, if they are not in control of the treasury, if they are not in control of the key seats, then they are in opposition and they have to lobby a whole community to go into a certain direction so that they lord over them. Those ethnic nationalists need to be shamed around, to actually need to be shamed, because that's not how you run a nation. The same things.
And we'll get to magazeti. Let's see what else is on the front page. Kiptum's road to greatness, and this is Calvin Kiptum record breaker Chicago Marathon. He ran it in a time of 2 hours 35 seconds. Hongera kwake. And at the very top here, I see inside governor's fight for roads, billions, the fight for control over nearly 100 billion shillings collected by the Kenya Roads Board from the fuel levy annually has emerged as a new battlefront between governors and the national government that has threatened to spill to the courts. And we continue with the book Serialization, Chesoni's Death and the Battle to Save My Career. The author is the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, doctor from Israel, and Pamela Stoney sat down with him for an interview, and so the serialization continues in today's Daily Nation. Let's take a look at what else is contained in the dailies this morning. Looking at Taifa Leo, kuna kitu kipya hapa. Mapatano wasinge onana uso kwa macho baada ya uchaguzi mkuu uliosababisha maandamano makali, ila kwa sasa viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kumchangamkia Rais Ruto huku wakimponda Gachagua. Je, kunani? An image here of Kalonzo Musyoka on one side, Raila Odinga on the other, William Ruto at the center. I did see an image up here of Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president. Gachagua akunja mkia, agutusha wengi kwa kutaka urafiki na uhuru, huku Ruto akianza kumponda. What did you make of, let's say, the statements, for instance, Arnold's, to begin with, Ochilo Ayako yesterday, Governor Migori County, explaining why he welcomed the president to his county with open arms? Do you agree with this particular headline on Taifa Leo, that viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kumchangamkia Rais Ruto? I remember he said kuna rais moja na kuna baba moja.
It's actually, in my opinion, quite sad, not just Ochilo alone. I saw Orengo take quite substantive time to explain why he was actually in that particular event. And that is a shame. I saw Anyang' Nyong'o take time to explain. And then I saw Gladys Wanga take her time to explain why she's there, and she was there, quote unquote, because of development and stuff. Then, of course, we were talking about Ochilo Ayako yesterday. In my opinion, and you know, in Gladys Wanga's instance, for example, it took the president to also intervene and say, to emphasize that she has not defected, she's here because of such and such. You know, when is our democracy going to actually get to a level where you can actually do something and people see it for what it is? You don't have to keep on explaining. That level of explaining for me felt like it's kindergarten politics, whereas in Orengo was like, I am here because I was called and I was told, so otherwise I wasn't coming, blah blah blah. That level of doing politics is just wrong for me, because somehow as a country we must get to a place where we can actually run a country. This is a country. It's not a chiefdom. You know, these ethnic nations that we've actually raised all over and we are struggling to bring them down should actually come down. So, and also even having headlines that talk about how people are warming up to the president and stuff also just, of course, affirms the feeling that we really have not gotten there. But it is wrong when a whole governor has to, the first statement they say that I am here because of. Ordinarily, what did we expect them to do? We know their work, and but even wananchi understand their work. That when the president has come down here, whatever he's doing actually touches on you. That's why it will be foolhardy for a member of parliament, for example, to say, I will stay away because the president, I belong to a different party and the president is coming to my area. So they do something that is consequential to your being in power. And then when you come back, you say they're fighting you. So when we elect leaders, but there is no people who are outside of government and in government, so long as they are elected, all of those people are government. That is one thing that we really don't sometimes really emphasize. All these people are in government, whether you are in opposition or you are not, so long as you've been elected and you're in office, you are government.
But how surprising is it? I understand where they're coming from, because this electorate, we have been led to believe heavily leans towards Raila Odinga, yeah. And he has not acknowledged, or rather at some point he declined to acknowledge the presidency of William Ruto. And the MPs who had trooped to State House, quote unquote, were censured by the party. So then is it a surprise? Because there were questions the MPs were asking, when governors meet the president, it's not a big deal, but when we meet the president, all of a sudden we're not deserving of our political posts under those political party tickets?
You know, when you see the leaders that were punished, for example, except for Esther Passaris, who had a small part on her back, majority, the core of those who were punished were from Nyanza. And I think they did not do disclaimers. You know, like if you're going to meet the president, you walk around with a disclaimer on your face that I'm here for development, I am not here because I've defected. Which for me, like I said, feels like tautology. We can't actually keep on moving.
Wait, to what? It feels like what?
I say tautology.
Tautology. And then there was, in your previous remarks to do with the perceived rift between the president and his deputy, you talked about Tugege stand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so when leaders have to walk around as if they are walking on eggshells, they are so careful, they can't be seen in some places. Yet, where is their working position? Where is their office? Their first office is in parliament, for example, and they meet together. Why don't we, for example, have an office, a parliament for the opposition, and then a parliament for quote-unquote those in government? They are working in the same place. They pass the same bills. They are paid by the same budget. They have got the same privileges. They get the same salary and allowances and everything else. That is okay until you have to appear in some other spaces. So that leaders have to walk around explaining why they are there. And I actually was explaining to a group yesterday that for me, it really didn't sound so good, at least as a reflection on our democracy. It's okay for the reality of the ground. Right. But that James Orengo took about 3 minutes to explain why he was attending that. And that Anyang' Nyong'o was so brief in that particular meeting, and he took 80%. I think he spoke for about 2-3 minutes, and 2 minutes were about why he is there. And then, of course, Gladys Wanga had to emphasize that she's there for development, and she did it so painstakingly that the president actually then came in to say, let me also help and clarify that she has not defected. Okay. And then now, of course, Ochilo Ayako yesterday. That explanation actually behooves them of power. They come off as people who are not their own men and women. Okay. And that whatever they are doing, somebody elsewhere, they are just puppets. And that somebody somewhere is pulling strings. I'm
curious what Mark Bichachi has to say on the subject, communication strategist. Mark, tulikuwa tunaangalia hii headline ya Taifa Leo. Kuna kitu kipya hapa. And reading this mapatano, let me just come in closer. Here we go. Wasingeonana uso kwa macho baada ya uchaguzi mkuu uliosababisha maandamano makali, ila kwa sasa viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kumchangamkia Rais Ruto huku wakimponda Gachagua. Je, kunani?
First and foremost, thanks for having me, and apologies for being slightly late. One of the things that we have to be very, very clear about, and I've said this on this show before, is that the statement that Kenya is a corporate concern that has shareholders brought unintended consequences. One of those unintended consequences is it felt as if that leaders had to pander to the government of the day to be seen that they are worthy of development, that they are worthy of sharing in what we proverbially call the national cake. For example, when you see Anyang' Nyong'o and the rest speaking in the manner for which Arnold Maliba has said, it is not from nowhere. There is a history. Because it is assumed, just like the Tugege nation that he's talked about, marched themselves towards State House from Jubilee Party to form Jubilee BA. I'm not even sure which one they belong to. There's a lot of apprehension within the political circles that we have created such an us versus them environment that when them is with us, people ask, have we joined them? That is the question. And it is unfortunate that the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, would disagree with the President when the President correctly says that Kenya belongs to all of us. When people voted in 2022, they were not voting in a referendum to separate us from the Tugege nation and the rest of us. That's not what we voted for. We voted for one Kenya to have one president. I did not not vote for William Ruto, but he is my president. And when he says and does the right thing, like when he says that Kenya belongs to all of us and we should all have a share in that particular concern, I agree with him completely. And therefore, I also disagree vehemently with Rigathi Gachagua, even though I understand where he's coming from. The deputy president is at pains to maintain his power, and he assumes his power comes from Mount Kenya. I need to remind him that the votes that William Ruto got in Mount Kenya, maybe 2 or 3% is from Rigathi Gachagua. 98 to 97% came directly to William Ruto. It is a mistake to underplay the political power that is William Ruto.
And related to that, because this is, we had looked at the Daily Nation just before you came in, and this is the headline related to what we're discussing this morning. Sorry, this is page 6 of the Daily Nation, and I'll come back to it, but related to the Taifa Leo headline, Nyanza still ODM zone, Raila allies insist after Ruto tour, and the minority leader in the National Assembly, Opio Wandai, here is quoted, "Everyone is welcome to visit Nyanza. As far as we are concerned, Mr. Odinga has not recognized his presidency, and as such, we don't." We'll come back to that. I wanted us to look at the front page of the Daily Nation. Here it is, falling apart is the question. Kenya Kwanza leaders appear to be reading from different scripts. Ruto and Gachagua in a back and forth over, quote, shareholding. You've referenced those statements. This is what the president said. It is primitive and backward for anybody to imagine that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted. That is not correct. The deputy president, those who joined us late, should not expect much at the expense of Kenya Kwanza loyalists. We will continue giving good jobs to those who stood with us from the beginning. And Arnold Maliba said they were not doing missionary work, said loyalists. But my question is this. Rigathi Gachagua took the view yesterday in Nandi. He was in Nandi for the launch, I believe, of an ACK, commissioning of an ACK plaza. But he took the view that him and the president are saying the same thing. He said development is for all Kenyans, but when it comes to jobs, those are the preserve of those who stood with William Ruto. So are they reading from different scripts?
Let me just understand what our deputy president is trying to say. So the next time you apply for a job and you write your name Arnold Maliba, you must underneath there state when you joined UDA and whether it was before or after the other applicants.
To be fair, he said the plum positions. The plum ones.
Talk about plum positions. Because my question is, if today there is a job for the chair of Kenya Export Promotion Council, right? For example, would we take someone who's a loyalist or someone who's good at export promotion? You know, let me tell you, I will not waste any time discussing this issue. Being in opposition is not supposed to be the same as being a murderer and therefore being taken, your rights being taken away. Every Kenyan has a right to be appointed into any position. Every Kenyan has a right to every plum job. There is no requirement whatsoever constitutionally, legally, or even in the imagination of everyone else other than Rigathi Gachagua that you need to be a UDA loyalist. That is not a requirement by law whatsoever at all. Question: you want to tell me that my good friend Osiani, when he was put as CAS, as a DO or an ODM member, he could not perform because ODM cannot understand Jubilee leadership? That's not true. The truth is, and this is, for me, I find very sad. You cannot tell me that UDA loyalists have no use whatsoever for brains outside UDA. Kwani the rest of us have what? Black matter instead of gray matter. Let's just be serious. The fact that this country is at a point where we're discussing positions based on how people voted is unfair. And unfortunately, the result will be division of this country for no good reason. Because in 2027, guess what? Rigathi Gachagua himself might find himself voting against William Ruto. And then what?
Okay. So I know, Arnold, you would like to reply. So briefly, then we'll put a pin in it and come back.
I think there's a little bit of conflation here. The president is talking about development. He's been very, very clear. William Ruto is the president of the Republic of Kenya. Rigathi Gachagua is also saying the truth, which let us not really, like I said earlier on, there is quite a number of things. There are a number of things we are mixing up here. Whatever the deputy president is saying is true. We might not love his way of saying things. And like I said earlier on, horse trading is normal in politics. And I asked you, did you expect that Moses Francis Wetangula was supporting Kenya Kwanza as just a well-wisher? Was Eliud Owalo supporting this government as a well-wisher? No, he was there and had legitimate expectation that were it to win, he would come in. We are mixing two things here. There is a battle of succession in Mount Kenya. And like I said, there are people from that particular region who are bullying the entire community and guilt-tripping the community because the community made a decision, a number of voters made a decision without kowtowing to their way of doing things. So they are now bullying them, shaming them and calling them Tugeges and even calling the whole area Tugegistan because they want them in a corner where they can control them. These people have a hangover where once upon a time in this particular country, you looked at every appointment and it looked like the core support of the president and the deputy president a little bit, and then the rest of Kenya walikuwa wanaongezwa kama chumvi ama kachumbari kafirifiri kwa umbali kabisa. As in the rest of Kenya walikuwa na sprinkliwa tu juu. As in when the appointments are done, you look at the national budget and that is how it looked like. If you did an audit of the last 10 years, exactly that is how it looks like. That then there was the core of what was supporting the government of the day, and then the rest of Kenya ilikuwa kafirifiri kwa umbali tu inakuwa tu sprinkled juu hivi. So there are people who still have got a hangover of such like an order. But as a republic we must move forward. As a country we must get to a place where every Kenyan is a Kenyan and the government is the government for everyone. So what the deputy president is saying here is saying that of course we have got our people who supported us. And I need to repeat, all those people did not do it as missionaries. It was not missionary work. They were not spreading the gospel. And even people who spread the gospel have the hope that by doing that they will go to heaven. They don't do that so that they go to hell. It's not free of charge. So we are mixing up things here and trying to spin something that does not exist. The deputy president said this is not falling apart. I know that the phrasing, and you know Mark will actually take the communication angle. That is his strength. The phrasing of that particular statement, forgetting the kind of public that we have today, was quite a dangerous one. So people would actually go around and spin and spin and spin. You see, Opio Wandai, for example, says that Baba has not recognized the president and everybody else is allowed to go to Nyanza and everything else. Of course, all of us know that the legitimacy of the presidency is not in the place of Raila Odinga's recognition. It's not his preserve. There is what the constitution does. So whether he recognizes or not, and that is why like leaders have to painstakingly go out and explain. But they will still have done this painstaking explanation, whether the shareholding statement had been made or not. They are doing that because they are captive of a force that should not be, we shouldn't be talking about that at this particular point in the time, or rather in the life of our republic. Okay. We need to move on.
Okay, a number of questions arise for me, Mark, but let me just quickly look at the other dailies and we can come back more substantively in the next few minutes. Business Daily, this is it. Kenya to compel foreigners to buy local health cover plan will hand local insurers a major windfall. New fund to replace NHIF to be one of the biggest winners. Safaricom halves suppliers as spending breaches 100 billion shillings. Safaricom more than halved the number of suppliers. There we go. In the 6 years to March this year, despite the total procurement spending on local and foreign businesses crossing the 100 billion shilling mark, the telco has disclosed in the latest sustainability report that it closed March with 720 suppliers, marking the 6th straight month of reduced number of businesses trading with Kenya's most profitable company. The 720 made up of 550 local and 170 foreign was a drop from last year's 799 and a 62.8% decline from the high of 1,172 in the financial year ended March 2017. On the ticker this morning, here we go. Kenya imports from Russia, Ukraine hit 51 billion shillings. Expenditure on imports from Russia and Ukraine climbed nearly fourfold in the first half of the year, official data showed on Thursday, driven largely by increased, what word is that? Can't make it out clearly. Increased orders of wheat and maize grains. Telkom Kenya loses 1.6 million customers. Telkom Kenya, the third biggest telco in the country, lost 1.62 million subscribers between March last year and June this year amid the latest crackdown on irregularly registered SIM cards. An analysis of official data shows that the telco had 2.25 million active subscribers as of June, a 39% dip from 4.14 million subscribers in March last year. And finally, on the ticker, pension fund assets up 127 billion shillings on NSSF new rates. Pension fund assets rose by 127 billion shillings in the first half of this year, boosted in part by the introduction of higher mandatory contributions to the NSSF and exchange gains on offshore investments. Let's take a look now at the Standard. And here we go. Broke millionaires. Doing business with government can be lucrative, but in some occasions, the money has always been on paper, with pending bills running into hundreds of billions. Government suppliers are regretting their business decisions to wade into the tender business. Simply the best. Kiptum new marathon record holder. Will Ruto excel in Nyanza, where many have failed, and Israel faces long, difficult war with Hamas? Let's see at the very top here how hysteria manifests in adolescence. Let's take a look now at the Star, and this is the front page. Ruto succession battle threatens unity in rift. At the center of the struggle is fight for president's heir for the 2032 general polls. Possible successors include CS Murkomen and Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, and an image here of KWS do heavy lifting as they load a buffalo into a truck. This is where Opejeta Conservancy for translocation to Tundra Conservancy in Laikipia. Ruto fires warning shot at cartels as he moves to save sugar industry. He reiterated his statement of Mambo ni Matatu, because it says these, quote, cartels holding the country hostage at the courts. Elegant woman Nguviu secondary student celebrate headmistress 47 years after leaving school, and Maraga reforms hundreds of senior police officers moved as new transfer policy takes effect. So this is the front page of the Star. I will suggest we take a break, gentlemen, and then now come back substantively with the topic of discussion. Ishmael Nyaribo has joined us, Wakili, advocate, and also political analyst. And we've touched a little bit on the topic of conversation already. This is the front page of the Daily Nation, falling apart, Ruto and Gachagua in a back and forth over, quote, shareholding. When you look at the Taifa Leo, it's not too far, because they say, kuna kitu kipya hapa, je kunani? And the details here as ishara za urafiki baina ya Ruto na Raila Kalonzo zazua gumzo kuu. Wasingeonana uso kwa macho baada ya uchaguzi mkuu uliosababisha maandamano makali, ila kwa sasa viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kuchangamkia Rais Ruto huku wakimponda Gachagua. Je kunani? On the other side of this break.
I can't understand, for example, why this guy wears like this.
As a 24-year-old in this country, if I walk around in ripped jeans and I have dreadlocks, you've already judged me on the basis of how I look.
You guys think I was born old.
As we sit here today, we all carry a lot of pressure and sometimes even pain and issues that we go through. And as we say in our African culture, mwanaume akilia machozi yanaenda ndani.
Being vulnerable is okay. Okay, I think that's the key. What we are lacking is the safe space to express that vulnerability.
There's a difference between being vulnerable and broadcasting your feelings to everybody.
Micro, small and medium-sized businesses an engine to Kenya's 13 trillion shillings economy and a workhorse in the labor market, accounting for 8 out of every 10 jobs created annually. On the 19th of October 2023, the Nation Media Group will be hosting the Thamani Experience. Join us and your fellow business persons on the 19th of October 2023 at the Pan-Africa Hotel between 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. for a resourceful night of networking. The Thamani Experience, showcasing resilience and exploring scalability.
I just don't remember my dad. I've only known him for 2 days and now he's gone.
I believe that everything will be fine in our family, and we will all be happy.
You think I don't know that I'm going to be watched? It's okay. Let them. They will die of...
How can you be so sure? What happened?
I'll come over and tell you.
I would love to cooperate with you. I'll tell you everything.
Of course you'll tell me everything. But first you'll tell me where Tanya and Danya are. We have a tale.
Who is it? Police? Valiant Strelitsky?
Oh no. This is another old friend of mine.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. We have in studio Arnold Maliba, public policy analyst. We have Mark Bichati, communication strategist. We also have Ishmael Nyaribu, advocate and political analyst. Sasa tumeingia mambo ya shareholding. Yeah. This is our poster this morning. Shareholding in government. Will bipartisan talk see another divided presidency? And the basis for this discussion is statements made in recent days by the president. The president, I believe it was in Homa Bay, wasn't it? He said it is primitive and backward for anybody to imagine that a region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted. That is not correct. The deputy president made it clear in Nandi yesterday again. And this is the fact that he's been talking about this repeatedly. Does it feed the headline of Taifa Leo that perhaps kuna kitu hatujambiwa bado lakini iko njiani? Ishmael Nyaribo.
Thank you, Olive, for inviting me to your show. I think before I mention the real problem with the deputy president bringing in this shareholding issue every time, we need to remember that Gachagua was actually picked as deputy to Ruto during a very heated exchanges at Karen, when everybody knew that Kithure Kindiki was actually going to deputize William Ruto. Behind the scenes, we all know that there was a money play, there were numbers considered, and several things. It is not the power or viability of Gachagua that actually made him deputy president, and you can see from his utterances that he really did not fit those shoes for becoming deputy president. I can explain this without wink that if you understand the ramifications of what you speak, the words you bring out of your mouth, you are deputy president, you are running a nation. When you run a nation, it is totally Ishmael, different from...
To be clear, he said the president is representing the interests of all Kenyans. He said he's holding the political bastions of Mount Kenya and Rift Valley. So I don't know whether we should call him the deputy president of the Republic.
Yes, only that is where the problem is, because you are deputy president. The Constitution envisages a situation where you are deputizing the head of state. And then you are saying, I am the one, and he speaks in street language, Swahili, that he is the one, mimi ndo nashika kifunguo ya rais, you know, rather paraphrasing it. What he is trying to tell the country is actually that business is in the state, and those who can do business with the state are those who have voted for it. And this is where the real problem is. Because after politics, after campaigning, really you look at the nation. You don't look at parties. And this is where they are really misdirecting the nation to. You look at the country. You look at those who voted for you. You look at those who did not vote for you. Because those people who voted for the other candidate, but who are not politicians, they simply voted. They are Kenyans. So there's a big problem when you see a person of the stature of the deputy president insisting that he has no shame, he has no regrets, to say that shareholding belongs to those who actually voted for Kenya Kwanza and made sure. I had my brother, when I was just coming in, saying that the likes of Moses Wetangula, you know, the likes of say Kithure Kindiki, who fought to ensure that Kenya Kwanza has won, should not be seen as mere voters. And I agree. I don't think any political analyst, anybody who understands how state operates, I did not vote for. So
where is the problem? Because my understanding is what Rigathi Gachagua is saying isn't necessarily new. They are called the president's men for a reason.
My point was, you just cut me short. But the point is, it is expected that those who have supported the party that comes to power, obviously and definitely, must be put in certain critical positions to support the policy and the memorandum of the UDA, of Kenya Kwanza. But that is over now, because Moses Wetangula is in office. Kithure Kindiki is in office, and all the president's men are in office. To repeat that 1 year after elections, that those who vote, and you know, it is true they have done that. Those who did not vote for the Kenya Kwanza have been left behind, even very competent citizens who could very easily actually help William Ruto to lead the nation. So I think the president and Kenya Kwanza should try and whip the deputy and people who think like the deputy president, so that they are able to understand that civil service needs technocrats, needs experts, needs actually sober-minded people to lead the country, and not to lead Kenya Kwanza. There is such a difference, and you can see that in how politics is done out there. Now, I want to finish. I want to finish this point by saying, I think that the legal advisors, you know, the president has a lot of lawyers, should take him through the Companies Act. There are shares limited by guarantee. There are shares limited. I mean, there are companies limited by guarantee. There are companies limited by shares. And there are several companies. So that he understands that there is absolutely no problem when you say a company or whatever. But there is a big problem when you go to public service and liken it to a limited company. I don't know whether he's talking of a public company or he's talking of a private company. But from his the way he uses his words, it appears as though he is talking of a private company and not even a... Because if you talk of a public company, it belongs to several people behind you. So really trying to reduce Kenya into a shareholding of a private company is actually an insult to
Israel has said the chills needs a fridge. Mark Bichache and Arnold, I'll come to you. I know ideally you should be coming in next, but Mark, what makosa ni gani hapa? What the deputy president has said, you know, he refers to himself as a truthful man. Is the fault in rubbing our noses in it?
You know, let me start here. I have always been against the idea of a president and a deputy speaking out of turn. The deputy president, first and foremost, is at fault for saying statements that appear to be, and in my opinion, are in opposition of what the president said. It is not the face of the presidency that Kenyans voted for. That's number one. Okay, I do not wish what happened to Uhuru Kenyatta to happen to William Ruto, because I desperately need William Ruto to succeed. Okay, number two is I must applaud Arnold Maliba for making a gallant effort to try and separate between development and jobs, and saying that the president was talking about development and Rigathi Gachagua is talking about jobs. I want to state here categorically that there is no position in Kenya called UDA affiliate, UDA supporter, you voted for UDA. There is a reason why the ballot is secret. The ballot is secret to protect people from people like Rigathi Gachagua. That is why the ballot is secret. No one should be victimized for how they voted in any election. It is wrong. It is morally wrong. You cannot say that you disqualify anyone for any position simply because they did not vote for you. Thirdly,
or you assume that they did not vote for you.
Yes, you imagine
based on their ethnic persuasion.
Exactly. And third, and in fact that's my third point, that if you continue with this shareholder plan, then you will say the bulk of Kenya Kwanza jobs should go to Kalenjin, then the second bulk should go to Mount Kenya, then Arnold Maliba's cousins in Bungoma should get positions, and then people from Luo Nyanza should not. That is exactly what the president was trying to cure. The fourth point is this: the constitution envisages that the presidency is a unifying factor of this country. You cannot make statements sitting in the presidential office that are deemed to separate Kenyans, whether you want to call it development or jobs. You cannot separate Kenyans either by tribe or by voting bloc. The moment you are president, you do not say, I am putting my hands on the Bible to be president of the people who voted for me. You do not put your hands on the Bible to say you will appoint the people who voted for you. You become president of everyone, including the people who do not like you. Guess what? The president, in fact, let me tell you how important the job of a president is.
But you know, the deputy president has placed a distinction, or rather, is that, okay, I know, forgive my English, but you get my meaning. He has said the president is the one who's unifying there. Me, I'm holding down the fort.
It's the reason why I'm calling it the presidency. There's a reason why Rigathi Gachagua cannot be voted out or fired, because he is part of the presidency. He is the principal assistant of the president. You cannot purport to be assisting the president and doing the opposite of what the president is saying. Okay. So let's be very clear. You know, I cannot go to my house and say, by the way, we are buying a blue car. Then my wife every day is saying we are buying a red car. It cannot work. My kids will sit us down and say, come on, please be serious and tell us which color kind of car we are getting. So the truth is that he should assist the president. That's what I'm begging him to do. Okay. Assist the president in unifying the country. So this idea, whether you want to call it development, jobs, whatever it is a very archaic village idea. And unfortunately, that kind of ideology is what gives to Gegestan meaning, relevance, and consequence. And as long as they continue talking like that, truthful or not, we will remind them it is unconstitutional, it is unfair, it is dividing Kenyans, and there is no way of defending it.
You said archaic and?
Backwards.
Backwards. The president used these adjectives as well. He used the term primitive and backward. But it's not the first time the deputy president has brought up this issue of shareholding. He brings it up every time there's an interdenominational prayer service, and he parades all of those from whichever community have been given plum government positions and all. What has changed? That the president has now 1 year, it has taken him 1 year to now come and tell us that it is primitive and backward for anybody to imagine that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted. To quote Taifa Leo, kunani?
First of all, since Mark has spoken and communication is his forte, I would want first of all to start from a communication point of view. That number one, Mark knows that when you are going out to do political comms, there's something called audience segmentation. And I've seen even the Nation does that very well. So you will find a different headline at the coast and a different one in Kisumu. You know, like they are two different papers, but then market audience segmentation is very, very important. So sometimes we get ourselves into things that do not even affect us. I am so sure that the deputy president has got an audience he is speaking to. He's a politician of note, a political scientist. He's worked in the administration for years. He's worked with the former president as a PA. You know, those people are actually very good politicians. He's been a member of parliament. Now he is a deputy president. So he knows audience segmentation very, very well. So there's an audience he's speaking to, and the rest of us tunajilazimisha kwa hii story. There are people he's addressing. Sometimes somebody speaks and you think like you're so act up. It's not for you. It's actually for a specific people. He's talking to them, they are listening to him, and he knows what he's getting out of that.
Good, but
I needed to start with that. I needed to start with that. Secondly, what we are suffering, this kind of headlines, we are suffering from the politics of kingpinship. There has to be a kingpin here, there has to be a kingpin there. So, and there is the unsettled question in Mount Kenya because the former president has totally refused to relinquish the community leadership thing.
But where is he? Do you see him?
He doesn't speak. Yes.
Where?
No, I'm saying, simply, normally, you know, last time Michuki was there as an elder and he said that if you want to talk to us, you talk to Uhuru Kenyatta. This particular time, the community led itself elsewhere, and that's why I was talking about a few people who want to bully the community into a corner so that they feel bad about themselves, and then they mobilize around that because apparently they didn't. There's something they have to.
But I mean, the dynamics have shifted because you look at Rigathi Gachagua. I believe it was during his interview, the inaugural interview, and he extended an olive.
And that is leadership.
I mean, you have to translate for me what he said exactly. But my understanding was that he extended an olive branch to the gentleman. You're saying he has refused to relinquish the leadership.
Yes,
of Mount Kenya.
He was actually. Is it to express your branch, olive? So he expressed an olive branch. No, that is leadership. He's the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. He is the senior most leader now from that particular, at least, of course, as a former president.
So who's going to box the community where?
The people, I spoke about the people who are pushing the Tugege and the Tugegestan campaign. It's all about shaming a people who made a decision. Ethnic nationalism, push them into an ethnic retreat so that then from there they organize and try come back to Nairobi as one block. People who do not understand leadership outside of that.
Isn't it interesting, that you have Maina Njenga and Rigathi Gachagua are basically calling for the same thing. But
you see, the others are being shamed into. So you're going to do, like the president can no longer just now have a cabinet reshuffle. Whatever he does, it is seen through some ethnic lenses. That you cannot run a government without necessarily appeasing to some ethnic nationalists' whims and feelings, whatever they are. But then I needed to say this. Now, Olive, a generation is about 25 years. About 25 years. So we've had 10 years of Uhuru Kenyatta. We are likely, and we're going to have 10 years of William Ruto. That means that is almost a whole, and those two people actually come from the same age set. So in 2032, you are going to have Gachagua at 69, you will have Kalonzo at 79, Musalia at 72, Wetangula at 77. Then, of course, coming down, the youngest person in the other group now will be the types of Mutula Kilonzo, who will be at about 58. What is actually happening actively under our nose and we are not seeing is actually a generational handover. There is that push and pull because the revolution that will happen 10 years from now is actually being farmed up now.
Okay.
So as people try to push and shove, like the mountain, and let's actually give it to the mountain, it's quite substantive when it comes to our politics, that when the mountain has got a little shake, the rest of the country is having a quake. So just some little push and pull from that particular region is what then is spilling into this. Because there are other people who are hoping, like the hyena that actually followed somebody swinging his hands, hoping that it will drop. They are following around, hoping that these particular exchanges and these kind of headlines will then aid into something major out of this particular story, or rather out of this particular government. But the deputy president is not diametrically opposed to what the president is saying. And like I said, I need to repeat this, that Omar Hassan in Mombasa was not working for Kenya Kwanza as a missionary. He's even a Muslim. He wasn't here to spread the gospel of Kenya Kwanza as the gospel of the Lord. He had expectations. Whatever support individuals had.
Spoils of power. Okay.
Yes.
So Ishmael, I would like Ishmael to come in, but you're talking about not diametrically opposed, but
yes,
it's not. It's about more than just the statement.
There's a point only I need to actually say just before Ishmael comes in.
10 seconds.
This is it. Once you get into power, you suit up. That is the rule. you cannot have, like, for example, Kenya Kwanza cannot implement the Azimio manifesto, and Azimio cannot implement, if they were in power, the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. One of the biggest problems we were having before we had these talks was that there was the push and the silent talks about the handshake. I remember Mark and I were on this particular set, and Mark even said the talks are complete, there is probably even a handshake in the offing. But this is the point. What Gachagua has been saying repeatedly is that there is not going to be a handshake. And if such like I think ever happened, the people who supported this particular government, or rather this particular administration, will not suffer. Like what happened in the previous administration when there was a handshake. What did we have? We then had a section of the people being sidelined. That's what he's simply talking to, and assuring the people who worked with him. Okay. Every good leader should not abandon his people on the battlefield, whether alive or dead, wounded or into whatever circumstance, you move with them. He is not saying that anybody should not get development. He's simply saying that they will not abandon the people who did the shooting and the marching with them.
But you know, it's interesting because when he spoke in Nandi, he said those who, for the last 5 years, because he said his push, he's championing for Mount Kenya and Rift Valley the base is because he said this is affirmative action, because he says in the last 5 years of the Uhuru administration, these people who voted for Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto would see development going to areas that did not vote.
Audience segmentation.
That's what he said.
Audience segmentation. Where was he?
Who
was he addressing?
For that administration. But Ishmael,
let me just allow me to disabuse this thing of audience segmentation. First and foremost, he is the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya.
And the deputy leader of UDA.
Let me finish. He is not the deputy president of Central and Rift Valley. Let's just be very clear. Lastly, and let me tell Arnold, when we are talking about national issues, we cannot zoom into UDA and make UDA the center of the nation. The center of the nation is 16 million Kenyans who are a going concern as a unit. And you cannot say that there was much more development in Western Kenya than in Central. Are you crazy? Have you been to Central? Have you been to Western? Go to my grandmother's house and go to Kimani's grandmother's house and tell me the difference. Please, let's stop lying to Kenyans. Effectively speaking, Central is the most developed part of this country, and it starts over here in Thika Road.
All right. Ishmael, is this smoke and mirrors? Are we being managed? And the reason I ask that is because Rigathi Gachagua has repeatedly sought to undermine this dialogue.
Yes.
The bipartisan talks.
Repeatedly, actually.
Repeatedly. And Kimani Shunga I can't not mention this when he said, you know, you don't listen to everything that people say outside there, even at Rurashios. Anyway, so they maintain that the eye is on the ball. But the deputy president has, even when he was speaking in Ukambani some time back, and he said don't expect much from these talks. But given his change of tune recently, do you smell something coming close to a handshake?
Yes. You know, I like to, talking about communication, and they are experts, but you can never change, you can never really determine the length the words will travel. You don't. Once you have said a word, you try so much to try to interpret it. Even our judgments in court, once you've made a judgment, people will interpret it. Professionals, lawyers, you know, interested parties will interpret the judgment from the way it is, not what you meant if you did not express yourself through plain words. Trying to say segmentation and all these kind of things and saying, oh, Ruto was in Nyanza. You know, really, you actually, I don't know if the Kenya Kwanza technocrats are listening to this kind of analysis, because I will tell you, you make the president look real bad. That if he's in Kisii, he will speak some language, and then if he goes to Kakamega again, he speaks some language.
But isn't that the nature of politics, though?
Now,
you tailor your message according to your audience.
That is true, but the nature of politics again is this. Politics is about people. What Rigathi Gachagua is feeling right now is a weight is uzito resting not only on his shoulders but in his mind, in his head, because the trajectory he has been taking is not tenable anymore. When you look at Bomas of Kenya today, the dialogue is going on, despite the fact that he was saying, no, there is no way, you know, this talk will have any meaning. He, of course, he has sent Malibe also sometimes to come here, and he has really castigated the talk. I mean, Malibe has been castigating the Bomas of Kenya. He doesn't throw my name, he's saying Malibe.
Audience segmentation.
He's talking about something else. But I mean the gentleman sitting on my right. So, Olive, the truth of the matter is you can never control, you cannot dictate that because I want to communicate in a certain way, I will use certain words. That may be your imagination and fantasy. The truth of the matter, how people understand you is more important than actually what you say. So that leaders must choose their words in such a manner that when they land in the ears of the people, they can actually agree with you, or rather, you know, bond with you language-wise. They can hear and understand what you're saying. So this cry of Bomas will not succeed is actually wrong, and you will see in a few days to come. When my brother here, Malibat, speaks about handshake, by the way, I am not even prophesying or saying anything here, but it is a possibility in politics that whereas the leaders have been talking about we don't want anything to do with Raila Odinga, we don't want anything to do with William Ruto, that handshake thing is still not far-fetched. It can happen. And so when we analyze for your audience, Olive, we should be middle ground. We should actually leave it that if they shake hands, it could be for the interest of Kenya and for the good of the country. Do not be so worried about Mount Kenya or Luo Nyanza or whatever, more than where the country's direction is going to. So now, when you talk about Gachagua being the, I don't know, spokesperson for Mount Kenya and Rift Valley, again, that is a big fallacy, because there is no community in politics that believes in another person speaking for him if that person is not from that particular community. So if you are saying Rigathi Gachagua is trying to protect the interests of Rift Valley, again, that's a big fallacy. I mean, there are leaders in Rift Valley, and Rigathi Gachagua is not coming to speak on behalf, for example, of the people of Kisii. Even Raila Odinga himself, he cannot claim that sometimes I speak for the Kisiis. No. The truth of the matter is that your words, the way you communicate, your interpretation of political events as a professional, for example, should leave that room that it is possible after Bomas of Kenya, dynamics will actually change. And we have seen that by the delegations that have been going to Bomas of Kenya. You've heard the Kikuyus themselves speak, forget Rigathi Gachagua. You've seen Kikuyus going there through professionals, through other groups, saying, you are now killing Jubilee, we don't have any representative. And they are aware that UDA has a whole lot of people from Mount Kenya, but they are telling you that we are not properly represented, not even by Rigathi Gachagua, who is the deputy president. Okay. So when you really come into interpreting language and words used by head of state and the senior leaders of the country, the words, the way they are said, first and foremost, must be interpreted in the way they come out.
Okay. And speaking of language and words, did Rigathi Gachagua sort of box himself, you know, put himself in this position, because he has cut a very polarizing figure, right? And some would say he's simply speaking it as it is. But did he forget the golden rule of politics, that there are no permanent friends or enemies, just permanent interests?
Well, it's quite interesting that you would bring that up, because the issue that Rigathi Gachagua is trying to balance is the issue of his deputy presidency, the issue of Mount Kenya brinkmanship and king, and then the issue of remaining relevant with the onslaught of the talks. Well, let me explain what I mean. The talks have created a very interesting opportunity for President William Ruto. And I hope that the luminaries in Azimio are listening. If you look at the crowd that came to greet William Ruto, if I was Azimio, I would be shaking in my boots. There is no one in the history of this country who's been able to go to a neighboring region, Central, and then convince them to vote for him right? Himself as a Kalenjin. He is the only politician in living memory who's been able to do that. The charm and woo effect of William Ruto is underestimated only by the foolish and blind. William Ruto will get grassroots in Western, he will get grassroots in Nyanza, and before they know it, he will have a base outside of Mount Kenya and outside of the Kalenjin Rift. That is the kind of astute politician we are talking about. So Azimio, wake up, because if you cannot smell the coffee, it is brewing so hot it's about to burn. So what Rigathi Gachagua needs to do is he's trying to show up to fortify what he considers is his relevance within the coalition. And I'll tell you why. If tomorrow the position of prime CS is created, what will stop William Ruto from elevating Aluya to the deputy president position and elevating Ndindi Nyoro, for example, to the premiership? These are the political chess pieces at play. So Rigathi Gachagua has gone to his enclave, his community, to show up his base so that he can have relevance in the event the talks torpedo his deputy presidency. But I will remind him that there is a very important lesson he must learn from Progozhin. You must learn that if you go against the head of state, you better finish what you started. And he must learn that from none other than William Ruto. Because William Ruto, when he went against the head of state, he made sure he finished everything. He finished BBI, he finished the elections, he finished everything there was to finish. There is no place Uhuru Kenyatta could breathe. William Ruto is no Uhuru Kenyatta. Standing and seeming to be in opposition to William Ruto might not bode well for him. The omens do not read very nicely for him. Thirdly, you may try to say it is audience segmentation, but I will tell you, unless you destroy all the translators, so when you go to Inoro, we do not get a translation of what you said in Inoro, then it is quite foolhardy to say that you are going to say different things to different people. It does not work like that in Kenya anymore. And the reality again is this: they must be reminded that they are not in opposition anymore. They are in power. Now, if you say you are defending positions, fine. Let's say it's about positions. How many millions of Kikuyus are you going to give jobs? If you give 1,000 of them, is that representative of the Kikuyu nation? No. The Mount Kenya nation wants jobs. The Mount Kenya nation, like me, is wondering whether to fuel the car when it hits E or when E is really E. It is the same thing. So the issue, if you want to talk about national cake, then talk about national issues. Talk about the rate of the dollar. Talk about the price of things and how it's biting us. Talk about the fact that Safaricom, of all companies, is downsizing how many suppliers it has. Talk about those issues, because you can deliver jobs, my friends, to as many of people in Mount Kenya, but when they go to the petrol station and supermarket and they cannot afford, of what point is it that you are representing them? If you cannot represent me in my wallet, me, I come from Wetangula's backyard, I do not care whether he's speaker. What I care about is how is my wallet feeling at the end of the month. That is true representation. This other thing is to get a conversation.
All right. Arnold, my question to you is this. The deputy president maintains, oh, you know, the government is stable. You and EPR, because he's also the same one who says, I cannot have fought for this government to come into power, and then once we are in power, simply relinquish.
You know, William Ruto, the president today, is one particular person who has been routed through such fire. He's gone through such a furnace. So he understands that stakeholder management is very, very important in politics. it's very unlikely. And I know we really are trying to talk about what is ideal here. I want us today, at this particular moment, to move away from what I call political utopia and this politics of entitlement. For example, my people in Matungu, that is somewhere in Wangaland in Kakamega, will want to vote for a different person, but then expect to be given a driver's seat. These are the political realities the Deputy President is speaking about. That you cannot vote for somebody else and expect to be made a co-driver once the other person wins. That kind of entitlement just doesn't work. That people should put their mouth
but
where
you know, Arnold,
their money is, or put their money where their mouth is politically.
If I may.
Let me just finish that point. I will lose my train of thought.
Right.
Let me just execute this. You will come back. This is it. The Deputy President and the President are not opposed to each other. We are the ones who are forcing a division that doesn't exist. And I'll tell you why. Storytelling has told to us, you see, the difference between us, anthropologists will argue that the difference between we human beings and other animals is that we are storytelling animals. The way storytelling was introduced to us is that in a story there is always a villain and a hero. So there has to be an us versus them. That is why you will see somebody like Chilo Ayako on the other side, when he seems to try to praise the president, he must find somebody else to bash, and therefore that is the Deputy President. That is, for me, is the limitation of storytelling, at least how we understand it. That is why somewhere I think in Deuteronomy the Bible talks about the things that are revealed to us are for us and our children, but for those that we don't know belong to the Lord. Now, we must also accept that in storytelling there is much more than just doing what? There is much more than them versus us, villains and heroes. And that we can still have a nation, you can still have politics without having a villain. No, guys are struggling to create a villain out of the Deputy President. The way, the last time we had a handshake, we had a villain in William Ruto. That's not going to work. And by the way, I do not think that what Rigathi Gachagua is saying is not what the president says. You see, these two people share offices. They call each other. Then you pick statements. They wake up in the morning, tell each other, good morning, Your Excellency, and then deal together. Then they come out here and address the media, and you say there's a problem down there. We are pushing what does not exist. So, from where we are, people must put their mouth where their money is, or money where their mouth is. You cannot expect people who are opposed to you to come and implement your vision and your plan. And that is what Rigathi Gachagua is saying. I don't know how difficult it is for us to understand what he's saying. That is political reality. We must move out of political utopia of saying that we are, it doesn't matter, that we oppose so and so.
I just want to interject, and I want him to answer actually. Are you saying that public service must be UDA or Kenya Kwanza based? We're talking about public service, technocrats. Are you saying that they've got to be Kenya Kwanza loyalists?
You see, when the president comes to office, he doesn't have more than 3,000 positions to fill. Those are not the most important positions in a bureaucracy. The public service he is talking about is a bureaucracy that exists. I think over 500,000 people. There should be around 700,000 people. The bureaucracy exists. The system exists. What we come in are just small patches here, and that is why you will even find there are civil servants who have got the audacity to tell PSS and CSS, mutatuacha tu hapa. That is the truth. So, public service already exists. These board positions, PSS, CSS, board members here and there, those are small jobs. They are not more than 3,500. So, we are not reconstituting the government of Kenya. But what the Deputy President is saying, that we had people who marched with us, people who understood the story of where we are going. When we have opportunities, we will actually have to consider them. They have got the qualifications. They have got also the competence. You see, there's this lie that to actually get, there is a side of the political divide in this country that has got a glut of talent, that has got this talent, has got the brains and everything else. Even people on the other side have the same. They went to the same schools, passed with the same grades. We should run away from this utopia and just accept that what the Deputy President is saying is stakeholder management. And he says, you people stood with us in the rain and in the sun. When the weather is fair, we will remember you. There is nothing wrong with that.
Okay. All right. So we need to take a break. But
I have a major issue here. These 3,000 jobs my brother is talking about are actually so to say, quote unquote, supposed to be competitive.
Not all of them.
They are supposed to be competitive. Ordinarily, the State House should not have jobs that it is just dishing out. I mean, the spirit of the Constitution and the HR policy in the country is people should be given jobs according to their qualifications. Now, my problem is, okay, even irrespective of that, let me ask, what is so difficult? Why is this not silent? The head of state and deputy head of state, they can actually make some decisions on their own. Why is it necessary for the television? Why should they say, are they threatening certain group of people? I mean, why are they making it? Why are they making public pronouncements that just remember we will only award our support? Why is that necessary?
Okay, so guys, we need to take a break. We need to take a break.
Competition does not just occur when you have got the job
10
vacancy.
Seconds, 10 seconds. You know, Arnold Maliba forgets, even as he defends this shareholding thing. I would like to ask him, on which party did he run last election? Just you two. It's a rhetorical question.
He doesn't need to answer. I ran on DAP.
That's all I wanted him to say, because then
I need
the shareholder agreement should apply to him.
I need to talk to him.
Have you seen his tie? Have you seen his tie?
Can the man just put on his tie? What's the problem with you?
We take a break. We come back with more on the other side.
Karibuni! Hii ndio base ya the best local entertainment. Baby!
Tumefungulia Magic. Starting from the 7th of October, Maisha Magic Plus will be on DSTV Access and GoTV Plus.
With Glovo, you've got the city at your fingertips. Hanging out na mnataka kuku fry ama nyama choma customized na ugali sosa? Order Glovo. Now enjoy. Time to shower and running out of soap? Order Glovo na uanze siku fresh. Ama simply treat family nzima with a sweet surprise. Delicious. With Glovo, unaweza track order yako minute by minute. Download Glovo, order anything you want and receive it in minutes.
As a man, the way I handle my finances is more about thinking of the future. So as a young person who has had a father, it's thinking of the long game. So every penny that I get right now is going straight to my savings, hopefully to get more so that I can invest it. So I think as a man, that's how most of us think. Kama ufikiri hivyo, kuna kashida mahali. My name is Kevin Miner. I'll see you on the 3rd edition of the Man Cave on 28th of October. I can't wait. It's a man's affair. So see you then.
Visit nation.africa. To catch the best of lifestyle and entertainment. Keep an eye on education and gender issues. Get electrified with the latest sporting action. Stay informed as we unravel intriguing undercover investigative stories. And enjoy comprehensive coverage from award-winning journalism and reporting, including politics, expert opinion, and breaking news. Settle for more content in great packages on any device. Nation.Africa. Empowering society positively.
All right, thank you for staying with us on AM Live. With me in studio, we have Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate and political analyst. We have Mark Bichachi, communication strategist. And I'm sure you've had the audience segmentation a number of times this morning. The man responsible for that is Arnold Maliba, public policy analyst. But Ishmael,
yes,
who do we believe? So first of all, I just wanted to make the point that yesterday the Deputy President said this whole shareholding thing is actually biblical. And he quoted Galatians 10:6, which reads, "So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith." Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone, especially to those in the family of faith. That's how he defended his statements yesterday. But who are we to believe between the president and the deputy president? Because Arnold Maliba says you are living in political utopia. But when the president began his remarks yesterday in Migori, he said this last election was historic for a number of reasons. And he said one of the reasons is because people in voting moved beyond voting along tribal lines. But here we have a deputy president who says he is representing the interests of Mount Kenya and Rift Valley. Who between the two are we to believe? It's a misnomer, is it not?
Yeah. Olive, I'm coming to that question as second limb. Number one, after this season ends, this political season, this Kenya Kwanza season, we will see the damage done by the regime in terms of misquoting the good word of God by limiting it to certain pronouncements within the Kenya Kwanza. That Galatians
10:6
book was written long ago, and the whole meaning and understanding and the purpose is completely not what Kenya Kwanza wants to interpret it to mean. But nonetheless, I mean, they have been calling upon God on several podiums differently. But once this season is over, it will be understood how badly the Kenya Kwanza damaged the impact of God's word to people who are meant to be saved in the real sense of what God's word should do. But I will leave that to theologians. We have several of them. They also come to your show. I normally see them. Let me hope they can interpret that for the citizens. Who do we believe then? I don't think we believe anyone. By the way, I don't think anyone, not anyone, let me say, I don't think a large number of Kenyans believe in what the deputy president is saying, neither do they believe exactly what the head of state is saying. We have now gotten used to how lies and populist statements are said, and as my brother Arnold confirmed here, the issue of segmentation, it depends on how you want to balance and manage people when you go to their local area. So the head of state was speaking in Luo Nyanza, and he had to make it look like I have appointed Owalo, I have appointed Ochieng of Siaya, I have appointed this and that, I have appointed the head of military and all that. In the real sense, Kenyans have come to believe that it is quite difficult for the head of state to implement his words in terms of how to bring up people in the bottom and bring them up to the top. In terms of talking with the international, heads of state, American president, and agreeing on foreign policy and agreeing that you can punish the local people and increase taxes for the sake of doing some demands of the international community, that they will believe the head of state. But when you go down, whether it is in Rift Valley, whether it is in central Kenya, by the way, whether it is in Migori, when you go and sit with the people, and we are there every other weekend talking with people, they are actually perturbed and shocked that their already bad life has been made worse. They are not able to eat well. They are not able to move from point A to B. They are being reduced to destitutes and desperation. They do not have what William Ruto promised them. So it's very difficult for citizens to believe what the head of state and what the deputy head of state are saying. They can improve and change that. How can they do it? They removed the subsidies. They said they were being stolen. They said people, the handshake brothers were borrowing money so that they could take to their families. And we believe now the new regime actually is going to change things. Then all of a sudden, no, they are borrowing. The subsidies that that is supposed to be saved, that amount of money that was being collected from fuel and other foodstuffs, which the government was shouldering, that money is being taken into other issues. And then when you see corruption, the scale of corruption, it has still gone up. So where is the truth when you told people that we will tutatoa mtu wa chini hapa tulete juu. Where are those internet connections you had promised in the markets? Where are those, you know?
But when you say the scale of corruption has gone up, how do you back that statement?
Okay. Every day I open the newspapers, I read corruption in the government. Every day I hear billions have been paid by the treasury to the counties. I hear money has been lost in the counties. So I don't have any other better barometer to use or measurement rule to use to say exactly in terms of statistics.
In your view?
Arnold can say that. But what we read on newspapers every other day is there is corruption in this institution, there is corruption in this. In fact, the president himself has come up and said, I think he has fired about 2 senior officials. So corruption has not come down as expected. It has actually shot up.
It could be argued either way in the absence of an empirical study. But Mark, what do you make of the point that Arnold Maliba has painstakingly sought to make, that actually the president and the deputy president are working in concert? That unless you live in some political utopia, as the president looks to net more supporters outside their political strongholds, the deputy president's mandate then is to ensure their people are okay, the people who stood with them.
I will spend exactly 10 seconds answering that question. In politics, there are no permanent friends and there are no permanent enemies. To assume the permanence of the relationship between Rigathi Gachagua and William Ruto is to assume that the sky will turn pink tomorrow and Mohammed will come back. Not going to happen. So let me address something that is of more importance to me. Kenya is sending 1,000 soldiers to Haiti. Kenya is taking a leadership position in the world. Kenya is sending its elite police officers to represent us out there. But Kenyans have decided to bash our own. Those police men and women are Kenyans. Those people who are going to risk their lives to stabilize another African country, because I consider Haiti African, are part of us. It is an integral thing for Kenya to keep on stepping up to its international requirements. Now, why do I bring this up? In a discussion about whether we are speaking from the same page as president and deputy. It is to bring to the focus that this country can be dealing with life and death issues. And then our deputy president, instead of addressing what Junet Mohammed said about our riot police will carry djembe, what are they called? Djembe pins, you know, the rods of djembes to beat them up, and to say that it is not Azimio, it is Haiti. There are more serious things imagined to handle in this country. And from that perspective, the deputy president should do himself the biggest favor he can. I have said William Ruto is no Uhuru Kenyatta. He has less latitude. He is a more aggressive politician. Rigathi Gachagua is best advised to deputize the president. Instead of talking differently from what the president is saying, so that we spend time discussing whether you support him or not, please discuss the issue of policemen in Haiti. Please discuss the issues of the economy. The president needs support in discussing issues of how the dollar is exchanging against the shilling. Those are the kind of supportive issues we need to hear from a deputy president. Listen, after you give 3,500 people jobs, and then what? And then what? What is and then? Is our pockets. It is 1,000 police officers going to Haiti. It is the state of the economy. It is how Safaricom is doing. It is whether or not the sale of Telkom Kenya was legal with a company that was incorporated in April and suddenly had billions to buy Telkom Kenya. Those are the issues he needs to deputize the president on. Not to disagree with the president about whether they are stakeholders or not. That is a useless conversation.
Have you seen that Mark Fuchachi has gone into foreign policy. I don't know whether you will have a chance to give us an opportunity that our police have been sent to Haiti. I don't know whether there was a proper public participation, quote unquote.
Was it necessary though?
Because how do you make a decision to interfere with the affairs of another country?
Because I assume it would have to get the green light from the National Assembly.
Yes, but if it's going to get a green light from the National Assembly,
who are the representatives of the people?
Is it necessary? Is it fair to go that direction? I am saying that because of what we are seeing now happening as well in Israel. I mean, foreign policy is very important. And trying to get into other nations' affairs should be with quite a bit of pinch of salt. I mean, you should not be quick to say, I want to go and resolve the problem in a certain country, and yet, do you have that capacity? Is Kenya first and foremost quite safe? Has it been secured by our own police? So yes, it is true. I mean, under United Nations signed agreements, a nation can be requested to help another one. That's not in doubt. But what my brother just mentioned so casually, as if this panel agrees that that our police should be sent out to go and resolve problems in Tanzania,
My point was to illustrate that there are weightier matters than shareholding that the deputy president should deputize the president about in terms of the public discourse.
Arnold, if we take foreign policy, for instance, that brings in the changes that happened in government, right? The recent mini reshuffle. And Arnold, you may have told us that people are making much ado about nothing, but there are those who view it as a vote of confidence in Musalia Mudavadi at the expense of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Is it, given this is a government we have been told repeatedly is one of shareholders, was Mount Kenya targeted in this? Questions like that arise.
You know, first of all, I know budgets in ministries, because of the functions they handle, could be different. But so my question is that proof of things in government are not quite as stable as Rigathi Gachagua sought to make them out? The idea of this government falling apart, of there being a rift, is an imagination of the media and a utopia for those people who do not wish this government well. And I'll tell you this. You see, Oliver, this I'll tell you 100%, that if you support me in the wilderness, I will remember you in the promised land. That is a principle in politics. What you hear, especially from Wakili Nyaribo, is actually he's bringing in the sentiments of these people who want to fight you in the wilderness and still want to co-rule with you once you actually ascend to power. It never works that way, because I am not going to have somebody give power to somebody to implement my plan when they were opposed to it, they don't even believe in it. Two, the issue of competitiveness, he talked about those 3,500 being merit. Merit is beyond what is actually on the advert. That's the truth. These are things we need to tell each other. That when was the job of the deputy president announced? It was announced in the wilderness when William Ruto was fighting, those days when he was being treated like a pariah. And Rigathi Gachagua stood with him. That is how he ended up there. Otherwise, then we will not have a political process. The job for the people in the cabinet was announced during campaigns and the struggle for Kenya Kwanza to get to power. So you cannot come to power politically, appoint your cabinet politically, and be told that politics can be set aside on that small room. There's a reason why we give the president that room to organize and suit up the top layer in the image he wants, so that he doesn't give us excuses later on that you forced on me people who are opposed to my agenda, you forced on me people who did not believe in my dream and the promises I made. So these noises about a vote of confidence in Musalia Mudavadi, tomorrow Musalia Mudavadi might be the Minister for Sports and nothing changes. Tomorrow it could be somebody else. Some people could be sent home if they don't deliver. So we cannot hold the president to ransom, that he can't even just move his own house to look like we want. All of us have got houses, and some days you move a seat because it's not in the right place. It's still your seat. You move it so that you feel comfortable or it works for you. And that's what the president is doing. He was given mandate, he made a promise, and he has got a team. He reshuffles them. Those of us who support, who are fans for soccer, once in a while, the coach changes. It doesn't mean that there is a problem. He swaps those people. Some other person comes from the bench, scores and makes up. It's about what the team wants, and that is victory. So all these things about the rifts and what is behind there, we are just trying to push stuff that do not exist. Two, the talks in Bomas. Let me ask you, knowing exactly how Junet and team and everybody in Azimio are actually running that particular campaign, if Azimio were in power today, would we have dialogue in Bomas today? Definitely no. Hii imeenda na ingekuwa imeenda kabisa, they would not have given anyone an opportunity. So, would Azimio, for example, have picked Rigathi Gachagua or William Ruto and worked with them in their government? Definitely no. So the people who are in Azimio, who supported in Azimio and are in Azimio, and still want to further Azimio policies and program and everything on that end, should not be moralizing and guilt-tripping this particular administration into appointing them. You cannot eat your cake and have it. You either cross over or you play that particular role that you're supposed to play from outside. There's no problem with that. So the issue about division doesn't exist. And by the way, let's also be candid. I don't believe I'm going to say this, but let me just tell you this. William Ruto must be the president of Kenya, the head of state. He is the leader of our nation. But Rigathi Gachagua is his deputy. Among the other things he has to deputize William on is the leadership of the party, handling political affairs, dealing with stakeholder down there. So if you actually sit out here and think that William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua are speaking different languages, then you probably don't know politics. As of those people who hope that by throwing around, creating a narrative that the two are fighting, somehow they will actually have a short-term opportunity to the feeding trough. You know, like, you believe you are in Azimio. You don't want to leave Azimio, but you are trying to sow a division in here so that you get jobs, and then in 2027 you will go back to Azimio and vote for them and campaign on that trend and hope that William goes down. It will not work. Those are tricks that cannot actually work in this particular regime, because William Ruto has been there and he knows that. Finally, I just want to ask you this. We know how the last regime treated the people who were supporting Kenya Kwanza, right? People were arrested, people were treated unfairly. You remember when Murkomen was having a hoarse voice in Bomas, saying, this cannot happen, Your Excellency, he was being booed. William Ruto, the deputy president, then was being booed and everything else. These people have been there. And like Martin Luther said, they have been to the mountain. This is the mountain of fire. And they know much better. So anyone hoping that there is going to be a replica of what happened in the past, honestly, needs to change their prayers and wishes.
Okay, Ishmael.
Sorry, Maliba. Sorry.
Okay, I have a question for you. I know you want to respond to what he said.
Yes.
But my question for you is this. Are things quite so...
bad?
No, I mean, I think it's quite so... I mean, Arnold is painting a picture of you guys are exaggerating the state of affairs, right? In Kenya, in the Kenya Kwanza government.
Yes.
But when you consider, and this is something I never thought to see, you see the deputy president extend an olive branch to the former head of state, who they branded as, I don't even know what to say. They said, this is the guy who is fighting our government. He's the one who is sponsoring opposition. They painted this guy in such bad light, who's, and Menanjega has said kondo zake zirudishwe, and now he's saying he's trying to bring Mount Kenya together, unity in Mount Kenya. So is this, in your view, is it about shoring up votes? Because he said, I didn't deliver 100%, and we want to win this next election resoundingly, so that there's no room for dialogue. Is it about that? Or do you actually see this as changing, switching alliances, trying to figure out, okay, what are my options?
I agree with the panelists, and especially Bichachi, when they allude to the fact that William Ruto is a very, very precise strategist in politics. And I've always named him Messi when it comes to the way he plays about it with his politics. Now, William Ruto started by silencing opponents. If you noted, when he came into office, in fact, he literally probably called. I am using probably because only my brother Arnold might know whether he actually did call or did not. But you count anyone who opposed him in 2022. They all went silent. After he was done with that, including the former head of state. And I'm not shy to say, he probably even called Raila Odinga. He silenced them. What method he used is what makes him a precise strategist. They all went silent. Where is Fred Matiang'i? He's silent. Where is Uhuru Kenyatta himself, former head of state? He's silent. It is a strategy that the president uses, that once he has dealt with enemies in that way, now he moves into popularizing himself. It is so open to our eyes as analysts. I mean, if anybody tries to say that this is not happening and that probably it's just nature taking its course. Now, coming to media, you know, Arnold, I mean, you know this in your heart that media is superior when you come to both influence and gossip. Media listens to certain issues we do not know. They've already highlighted them. So media listens to what is happening in Azimio. Media is listening to what's happening in the Bomas, and they are capable of picking out issues and bringing them up to their newspapers. I mean, they would suffer a big blow if they misreported something, not only locally, even internationally as well. So when you see them highlighting a headline of this nature, I mean, be nice to them and just say, okay, if there is any rift, it's not about maybe this or that, but try to understand that by the time things come here, there's a lot of gossip that has gone on. So you cannot come here and say there is absolutely nothing. These people are speaking the same language and they love each other and they are going forward. But in the end, Olive, even what is happening in Bomas of Kenya, it will benefit one man called William Ruto. In the end, why? Because every single day and night, he's strategizing. He was wooing people in Homa Bay and Migori when Kalonzo Musyoka, who is expected to be his main competitor, was actually in Bomas of Kenya sitting, having coffee and enjoying the discussions at Bomas. And William Ruto is so aware about the fact that let them take their time to discuss because it will go his way. But in terms of Kalonzo Musyoka, yes.
Wakili, I know hope is an important pillar in faith, but hope is not a strategy. Whereas Azimio had, I think, a 40-something page presentation at Bomas.
What's the question?
That's the question. I just want to. Kenya Kwanza did their presentations orally in very few minutes.
Yeah.
Malala, I can actually show you from my phone the presentation Azimio did.
Yes, hope.
At Bomas. Yes,
yes. For the questions.
Yeah, wait. I'm just telling you. So if you think that the approach on Bomas, the NADCO thing, between William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua is different, you just needed to look at what Malala presented. Okay, that is the approach. It's a uniformed approach.
No, but is yours a question or a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to tell you.
Ishmael
so
will lose his train of thought.
If he hopes that that William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua are looking at Bomas differently, he is wrong.
Wakili?
Look at how the chair.
Wakili.
I might be wrong, I know, but by the way, when you take office as a head of state, giving citizens hope is one of the most primary fundamental tasks you have. Telling them we have had challenges in the world, it's not only here, we will make it. If you don't give them hope, you allow the deputy president to go into criticizing them and telling them whatever, you're not right, we will shareholding, whatever. This is wrong. But giving people hope, first and foremost, irrespective of the fact that when you go behind the scenes, you cannot use hope as a strategy, that I agree. But giving people hope that things will be better is a fundamental duty of the head of state. But Olive, I was only prosecuting this point, that if Kalonzo Musyoka is going to again repeat the same mistake Raila Odinga repeated, by believing that for some reasons votes will drop into my basket, and yet not go to the people, be as charismatic as you used to be. Even if they are going to front Kalonzo Musyoka, even if Raila Odinga agrees actually to support Kalonzo Musyoka, he must do a lot of groundwork and do his homework to ensure that all the votes are channeled to Kalonzo Musyoka. But please understand, William Ruto, yes, is president of the country. No one is disputing that. He has already embarked on 2022 campaigns. So I don't see why Kalonzo Musyoka should not delegate some duties at Bomas and go to woo people and tell them we must save the country from what it is.
Although the president made it sound like it's laughable that Kalonzo Musyoka could take him on.
By the way, that was a strategy only. No, that was a strategy. Did you see
27. But Mark, what can we? I mean, it's just this administration. It's just been a year. You know, with the previous case, it was at least they had served together one term.
Yes.
Did you expect this?
Yes, soon? I did. I did because of the characters at play. Rigathi Gachagua is very ambitious. He's very vocal, and he's a truthful man. What truthful means, I leave to conjecture, because I don't think they're talking about truth. They're talking about his mannerism. Now, the truth is that I don't think Rigathi Gachagua can help himself in terms of how he speaks. So, for example, the president has never spoken ill of the talks. We have it on record that Rigathi Gachagua has said severally that nothing good will come out of the talks. It is on record. It's not a matter of conjecture. Arnold might want to pull out his hair, but I'm sure you can play a clip that shows Rigathi Gachagua saying so. Now, the fact is that the talks that are happening, when they went to parliament to be voted for, I want you to tell me which parliamentarian voted against it, whether Azimio or Kenya Kwanza. The answer is none. The fact is that the attendance of that particular meeting is higher by the panelists than it is in parliament. Those guys are more committed to those talks than they are going to parliament. The fact is this, that President William Ruto has found a brilliant chess move to keep Azimio busy in Boma's boardroom for at least 4 years. It's brilliant. And when they are busy for 4 years, what William Ruto is doing is he's busy campaigning, all right? And literally eating the meat from under their tables. Now, by the time Azimio wakes up, they will realize that those talks, every result that will come out of those talks will be the results that William Ruto wants. Because everything they're discussing is in the document that William Ruto wrote to Parliament as his stated intent for this particular parliamentary term. So in terms of who is playing chess and who needs to play catch-up, Azimio is the one that is flat-footed. And therefore, the argument that Arnold Maliba needs to wake up and realize is that Rigathi Gachagua is speaking out of turn to his boss because of those talks, because of what those talks portend for him and his political career, remembering that he wants to run in 2032. If you think for one moment I am lying, there's one politician that you may like or not like. He's called Moses Kuria. Moses Kuria was promoted, demoted, it depends on what you want. And when that happened, the picture he put on his Facebook profile, yes, was a picture of Rigathi Gachagua. It was not his wife consoling him for his promotion. It was Rigathi Gachagua telling you of the intrigues happening in Mount Kenya as to who will be kingpin, telling you that the hand that is supposed to be laid on someone's head to make them kingpin has not happened yet, meaning William Ruto has not chosen. So these intrigues are about who shall continue to be where Rigathi Gachagua is, and Rigathi Gachagua is fighting for relevance. That's pure, real politics. If you want to discuss ivory tower conversations, you can continue from here where
All
I've
right,
left.
so I have to bring the conversation to a close, if you can, in 30 seconds, Arnold.
Well, I just needed to say this. I agree with Mark entirely that probably the president is keeping Azimio busy for the next 5 years, and that is brilliant. But the talks would lack luster if there is no resistance to it. So if you think that the president is keeping them busy there, and not also appreciating that Rigathi is one of the salts that makes the conversation important, because people would see somebody opposed to it and therefore get committed to it, then probably your narrative is not complete.
All right, so I have to end it there, gentlemen. We've been discussing shareholding in government. Will bipartisan talks see another divided presidency is the question. And with me in studio, we've had Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate and political analyst, Arnold Maliba, public policy analyst, Mark Bichachi, communication strategist. But the deputy president responding to this headline carried in the Standard, was it on Sunday, I believe, yesterday? Troubled times, he said. While he has no apologies to make on his shareholding statements, government is stable. So we will leave the conversation there. My name is Olive Burrows. I am sitting in for Winnie Lubembe on Your World. Coming up next, and we're discussing mental health and why it is a human rights issue.